All right, so we are going to talk about estimating square roots. So using your calculator, we're going to estimate them, or really not using the calculator. But there's only a few perfect square roots. Okay, all the other ones make the square root irrational. So let's review the perfect square roots. I'm just going to start writing them. So the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. 9 is 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to go all the way up to 15. So we are going to have to memorize these because I won't have them up on the board or anything. So you're going to have to memorize your perfect squares. Okay. So those are going to be really beneficial for you for literally all of your other math classes beyond this one. Okay. So we are, again, going to have to memorize them. So now let's talk about steps. Steps to estimating square roots. Okay, well, the first step is to determine what perfect squares and integers the number falls between. So what perfect squares and integers that the number falls between, these steps will make more sense once we look at them together. Step 2 is to determine which integer it is closer to, because that's going to help us estimate our half root. Okay. Step 3 is to use that to determine if it is above or below the half root. Okay, I have to move this up a little bit. That's too hard. Okay, whatever. The next step is then you will be able to determine if it should be above or below 0.5, aka the halfway root. And then lastly is estimate to the best of your ability. If you're like 0.1 above or below the correct answer, then that's really not a big deal. But if you're like way far off, then we have an issue. Okay, so again, we determine what perfect squares it falls between, determine which integer, use that to determine the above the halfway root. The halfway root's just the middle, okay? Halfway root. Then you'll be able to determine if it should be above or below 0.5 and estimate. Okay, so let's start getting into the nitty gritty. So the square root of 15, what perfect squares does it fall between? Well, let's go back up and look at our perfect squares. 15 falls between 9 and 16. So I'm going to write those two perfect squares. Falls between the square root of 9 and the square root of 16. And the square root of 9 is 3. And the square root of 16 is 4. Is it closer to 9 or 16? Well, it's closer to 16, so it's closer to 4. So then it should be above the halfway root because it's 1 away from 16, which was that. So 15 is only 1 away. And since it's above the halfway root, that means it's above 3.5. So that means we can get rid of 4, C, and D. And above means it's got to be B then. Okay. So let's try another one. 128. 128 falls between 121 and 144. So it falls between 121 and 144. So make sure you're putting the square roots there. The square root of 121 is 11. Square root of 144 is 12. Is it closer to 121 or 144? It's closer to 121, so it's closer to 11, which means it's got to be down. How far away is 128 from 121? It's 7 away. So that means it's below 11.5. Where I'm getting this 11.5 from is because it needs to be between 11 and 12. So halfway between 11 and 12 is 11.5. So we're really determining, is it above it or below it? In this case, we said it's below 11.5, and the only one there below 11.5 is A. Okay, I want you to pause and try the square root of 6. All right, so hopefully when you did that, you said it was between the square root of 4 and 9, which are 2 and 3 respectively as integers. And it's closer to 4, right? It's closer to 2 because it's only 2 away, whereas this is 3 away. So it's a little closer. And then that means it's got to be below 2.5 because that's what's in between 2 and 3. And yeah. Okay. Last one that we're going to do together. So pause and try example 32. All right. So hopefully you got D 5.7 because you should have had that the perfect squares were 25 and 36, which means it's between 5 and 6 respectively. It's closer to 6 because it's only 4 away from 36, whereas it's 7 away from 25. So that means it's got to be above the halfway, which you remember halfway between 5 and 6 is 5.5. Okay, so now that was example 1. That's going to be the most common way you're going to figure out the best estimation. Okay, example 2, now we're going to work backwards. Okay, we have to figure out which square root fits the number line. So we have to figure out what square roots those integers relate to. Sorry, I'm really tripping up on words here. So 9, the square root that equals 9 is 81, and the square root that equals 10 is 100. So we have to look at this number line. Here's the halfway root. Is it above or below the halfway root? It's above the halfway root, so it should be closer to 100. So we can do process of elimination here. C is above 100, so it can't be that. A is closer to 81, so that means it's B. That means it's B. Okay, we're going to do the same process for this one. Okay, 6. The square root that simplifies to 6 is 36. Square root that simplifies to 7 is 49. The halfway is about here. It's below the halfway root, so it's got to be close to 36, but it can't be below 36. So close to 36, but not too below is C. All right, I want you to try example 3. Example 3 is kind of tricky. All right, so what was tricky about number 3 is that the dot's in front of 4. It's in front of 4, so it's even less than the square root of 16. But it's not too much less, so it's really close, so that's why we went with A, the square root of 15. Okay. Example 3 is really similar to example 1, except now we have to come up with our own decimal estimation. There's not going to be one. And after we do that, then we need to put it on the number line. Okay, so let's walk through set A for us. Okay, it falls between the perfect squares of 16 and 25, which relate to 4 and 5. It's closer to which one? It's closer to 4, right? Which means it's below the halfway root because it's only 1 away. So it's below 4.5. And since it's only 1 away, I would say it's really close to 4. So we're gonna say 4.1. And again, you're probably thinking, where did I get this 4 from? Well, because we said it's closer to 4, and it's got to be between 4 and 5. So it can't be over 5 and it can't be less than 4. So that's where we get the 4. The 0.1 comes because it's only 1 away from that 4, or from that perfect square. So then we're going to put A on the number line. So 4.1 on the number line is about here, and I'm just going to put A there. Okay, so A goes about there. We're going to do B now. There's one big difference about B. B has a negative. So the only thing that changes is that we should have negative signs in front of things. So the square root of 7 would fall between 4 and 9, but we're going to say -4 and -9, which is 2 and 3, but again, -2 and 3. It's closer to -3, right? Because it's only 2 away from 9. So since it's closer to the bigger number, it's above. And it's above -2.5. So it's above -2.5, but it's not super above 2.5 because it's only 2 away. So we're going to estimate that to about 2.6. And again, don't forget our negative sign. If you're thinking like 2.7, that's okay. Again, as long as it's within like 1 decimal point, we're okay. So -2.6. Remember, that's just a little bit further because negatives work backwards. So this is going to be B. Okay, I want you to pause and try C on your own. All right, so hopefully you got somewhere around 2.2, 2.1, something like that, right? So we know the square root of 5 falls between 4 and 9, which is 2 or 3, and it's closer to 2 because it's only 1 away from 2. So that means it's got to be below 2.5. So we're going to start at 2 and say, okay, it's really close to 2. So maybe it's 2.1 or 2.2. If you were to plug it in a calculator, it'd give you 2.2 and some change. So that's why I'm going with 2.2. Okay, and then we put that on the map here with C. All right, so make sure you ask any questions if you have any.